Today we continue our discussion of Chapter 9 to remind us where we're at. Chapter 9 discusses long-lived or non-current assets. We broke those into two different types, tangible and intangible. Tangible assets get their value from their physical existence. Intangible assets get their value from the rights that they confer to the holders of those assets. Examples of tangible assets include things like the buildings, equipment, machinery, etc. Examples of intangible assets include things like patents, copyrights, goodwill, etc. Our focus in this chapter, on the first part of the chapter at least, is looking at tangible assets. In our discussion in a previous class period, we said that there were three primary stages of life of a tangible asset as it relates to journal entries. The first one is associated with the acquisition or establishment of the assets. When we establish a tangible asset, our journal entry debits an asset, and we'll say, for instance, equipment, and credits however it is we pay for it. Let's say cash. And this is initially how we establish the acquisition. There's a few things to note as it relates to the establishment of a non-current tangible asset, one of which we talked about last class period. That was the capitalization rule. The capitalization rule helps dictate what it is that we debit and credit here when we are acquiring or establishing the asset. Remember, the capitalization rule indicates that we capitalize anything necessary to get the asset ready for its intended use. So the question becomes, are we using the asset as intended? Once we reach that point, afterwards we consider whether or not the additional costs are ordinary repair maintenance or extraordinary repair maintenance, which we're about to talk about here in a minute. But for capitalization purposes, that is what you record as a cost to the balance sheet as an asset, the rule is everything necessary to get the asset ready for its intended use. So we'll just write intended use here. The next item, though, to consider is ordinary repair maintenance, and we'll abbreviate that R&M, or extraordinary repair maintenance. Again, abbreviated R&M. So the difference between these really has a question about whether or not we are extending the usefulness or the life of an asset. Ordinary repair and maintenance are expenditures for routine maintenance and upkeep of long-lived assets, just like, for instance, if you're changing the oil in your car. So these are routine. Extraordinary repair and maintenance, on the other hand, are usually infrequent. They involve large expenditures, and they increase the asset's usefulness through, for instance, enhance efficiency, capacity, or lifespan. To give you an example, let's say that you had a building and a rock went through a window. Replacing that window would be an ordinary repair maintenance. But let's say instead you replaced all the windows in the building with energy efficient windows. Well, in that instance, since that enhances the efficiency of the asset, that would be considered an extraordinary repair and maintenance. The reason why we are concerned about ordinary repair and maintenance or extraordinary repair and maintenance is because if the repair and maintenance is considered extraordinary, it is added to or capitalized as an asset, okay? If it's ordinary repair and maintenance, it's expensed. So we expense when we incur the ordinary repair and maintenance. We capitalize the extraordinary repair and maintenance, which means we record it as an asset when we incur it. So far, we've covered the capitalization rule as it relates to the establishment or acquisition of a non-current tangible asset. We've also covered the ordinary repair maintenance versus extraordinary repair maintenance. The last item that we'll cover in terms of the uniqueness for the establishment or acquisition of a non-current asset is going to be basket purchase. When we consider a basket purchase, this implies that we are purchasing more than one non-current asset for a single price. Typically, when this happens, we're going to value the assets individually and then consider the combined purchase price as it relates to the proportion of the individual cost. So in order to calculate this, We'll assume a scenario where we buy a building and a land together for the price of $100,000. Let's say that if you were to have an appraiser value the building separately, you would find that it's $75,000, and value the land separately, you would find that it's $50,000. Combined, these equal $125,000. So obviously they're not the same value that we're buying it for the combined price, but you're going to get a discount if you buy them together. In other words, you're completing this basket purchase, so they give you a discount. What we want to do is associate the $100,000, that's all we're paying, between the building and the land costs. We need to know how much we debit land for and how much we debit building for. So in order to do that, we're going to again take the independent values here, the appraised values, and we're going to take a proportion, a percentage of the independent values, and then multiply that by the combined purchase price. This is the A over A plus B method. So A right here, the building, is 75. We'll take A over A, 75 plus B, B being the building, 50. This gives us a percentage here of 60%. We'll then multiply this times 100,000, and this provides for a 60,000 associated with the building. Then we'll do the same thing with the land. So we'll have B, 50 over A plus B, 75 plus 50 here. This provides for us 40%. Multiply this times 100, and this provides for us 40,000. Our journal entry in a scenario like this would have us debit building, debit land, and credit cash. The cash has to be 100,000. That's how much was paid, and then we associated 60,000 with the building and 40,000 with the land. Now, why is something like this important when you're establishing the capitalization of an asset? Well, for instance, land is not depreciated, but building is depreciated. Land is seen as existing indefinitely, and so we don't depreciate that asset. And you might think, well, but I thought, for instance, we might have land where we harvest the natural resources there. For that, we do depreciate, but we call it depletion. We do have a depreciation type method where we recognize the depletion of natural resources, but that's separate from the land itself. So the land itself we're seeing as lasting indefinitely, so as long as the earth lasts indefinitely, and therefore we don't depreciate it. And so that's why it's important that we split this among the two different assets we're buying, because depreciation then will be calculated solely on this building cost.